Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. My name is Simon Short. Joining me tonight is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome back in, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be back on. We are loaded tonight. We do a lot of stuff all year that we love. This may be at the top of the list. If not, it's really close. And yeah, I'm doing great. Living life, working hard, hanging out with the family, watching Winter Olympics, Bridgerton, Beast Games, YouTube, Brain Rot. I mean, you name it, we're watching it. So yeah, life is good.
Were those all Olympic events or are those additional things that happen after the Olympics?
I could tell you didn't watch the Winter Olympics much, did you?
Buddy, listen, man. Been been watching too much Keldrick Falk take. What are you talking about? I'm not in the Winter Olympics. Listen, it's draft season, baby. Players, coaches, executives around the NFL are at the NFL Combine as we speak for some Combine preview conversations. Hopefully, you listened to last week's episode with Peyton. If you're here on either YouTube channel, Simon and Friends, or Box Score Network, thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, comment. You can see a couple of those conversations clipped on the Box Score Network YouTube channel. Specifically, the Combine conversations about draft prospects are over there. To continue the shout out for Box Score Network YouTube, make sure you guys are over there for all your draft content. We're going to have multiple videos per week, the rest of draft season, all the way up to and through the 2026 NFL draft. So make sure you're checking that out. But first and foremost, this is the Simon and Friends podcast. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ben, for being here. No bells and whistles tonight. No images on our sidebar. No crawl down at the bottom to tell you guys what's going on. I'll just remind you because I didn't want anything to get in the way of tonight's content. This series, as Ben alluded to, this is one of our favorites. This is our fourth time doing this now. It goes back to the Stat Sheet podcast days. This started out as a project where I loved the draft and I did ever since I started doing this podcast, but I didn't yet have the ability or knowledge to scout individual players. So my foray into how do I talk about the draft in depth without knowing enough about the players was this project. And this is a team first look at the draft, kind of stacking round by round, day by day, vibe by vibe of what teams need, but also where the value is in the draft, where the depth is at certain positions. It's a way to say, hey, create a draft plan. Hey, okay, so this team needs to do this in the first round. They need to accomplish this at some point. You don't want to get in trouble and say, do get this specific position in this round, this one in this round. But we're going to talk about some players, fits, team needs for all of these teams. And now in the last 2 years, especially doing this with Ben all the way through, this project is just even more enriched now that I'm on the player prospect scouting side as well. So now we can really tie names to teams and it's a lot more fun. This first episode is always fun as well because we're going to tie in some free agency, some things that teams need to do in free agency, need to accomplish, things they might do with their team to get ready for the new league year beginning, get themselves cap compliant, things of that nature. Each episode, we're going to cover 8 teams, 2 divisions. We'll have 4 of these episodes between now and the draft interspersed. We'll go team by team. I'm going to cosplay as what I would do as GM for each of these teams. And I'm going to present my plan to Ben. And Ben is going to take on some caricature, whoever he chooses. He might look at it through an ownership lens. He might look through it through a coaching lens. He might look through it as assistant GM Ben Parker and tell me what he thinks of the plan I'm bringing to him. And we'll have a nice little debate. But the idea is to take you inside the minds and the rooms of people making these decisions of how these teams are going to operate these next 2 months, and what they need to do and what they should do and what some of their contingency plans might be if things don't work out. So this is the NFL Draft War Room series. Thank you for being here, Ben. Is there anything you want to say before we start?
Yeah, the one thing I will add there is, Simon, you've done the lion's share of the work as far as putting these plans together. You mentioned that. So when we talk about things tonight, it's not my goal to just rip them apart because I've had a lot of shows and a lot of projects over the years where I did all the work only to have somebody else just pick it apart who hadn't done a darn thing. All right. So that's not the goal. It's not what we're doing here tonight. But Simon took the time to put together these plans tonight. And then he and I together will start to hash through different points of it. We can't go through the whole plan, right? And, no, we
We
can't
might.
introduce every character, but
Like,
we will work our way through some of the highlights of it and together try to mesh some of those things up.
Ben, I strongly disagree. I've put a 90-man off-season roster together for every single team, and I expect to go through each individual one and for you to tell me why half of them are bad. Okay? So let's get back to it here. Let's get back on track for what tonight is going to entail. Um, I almost put a couple things in here just to grind your gears specifically, but I had to stay true to myself in some of these places. Um, what was the really fun one I was thinking of? It's towards the end. Maybe I'll sneak it in at the end of the episode just to keep everybody alive. Um, for at least the last couple seasons, we always start with the team that has the first overall pick. So this is the AFC West version of the episode. This is the AFC West segment of the episode. We're going to start with the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to start by giving everybody a breakdown of where the team is currently at. And this is going to be ever changing, right? So if you're getting to this in 2 weeks, obviously things are different now, but hopefully the points are still the same for the most part, maybe even if some of the finer details aren't. But I'm going to take you through where the team currently stands with their roster, take you through the goals of free agency, and then take you through the goals and needs of the draft. So here we go. The Las Vegas Raiders currently have $77 million in effective cap space per over the cap. Now, effective cap space is different from cap space, right? So depending on what sites you're looking at, I use over the cap because they give you effective cap space. That just includes a projected draft class amount of salary that you have to set aside after free agency to pay your draft class. It sometimes will include like practice squad estimations, but it also includes something called the Rule of 51, which I won't get into, but it's the specific NFL cap rules. Basically, this thing sets aside like $10 million dollars that other sites don't to say, hey, teams actually can't spend this money because they need to spend it for things after free agency. So that's the number I'm working with. 77 million in effective cap space, though. It's a big, big number. Draft picks that the Raiders are slated to have 10 in total, but seven of them are on day 3. So a lot of picks later on in the draft. Current roster, current things to deal with for the Raiders. One of the biggest questions of the offseason is what we are doing with edge rusher Max Crosby. And I can tell you we are not trading him. We are getting things straightened out and are going to build around him on the defense. We're also on offense going to move Jackson Powers Johnson to center full time. He's a player we believe in and want to put him in his best position to be successful. We are also interested in bringing back some of our own free agents at the right price. Guard Dylan Parham, linebacker Landon Roberts, edge rusher Malcolm Kuntz, and cornerback Eric Stokes. None of those guys should be breaking the bank. Roberts should be of that minimum. Stokes, Kuntz should be guys that are like in the sub $7 million range. Parham, sub $10 million range, I assume. Free agency. Assuming we do all that, let's say we keep those guys, we keep Max Crosby, assuming all that happens. Our biggest needs are at wide receiver, right guard, right tackle, edge rusher, defensive tackle, cornerback, and safety. Right guard, we're going to address in-house for 2026. Clint Kubiak covered that specific spot up for Seattle last year on his way to a Super Bowl. So, a la Jordan Meredith. So we'll let Jordan Meredith, Caleb Rogers, DJ Glaze, and Charles Grant battle it out for that spot in camp. We're going to make 2 big plays in free agency at wide receiver and edge rusher. Romeo Dubs, Alec Pierce, Wandale Robinson, Jalen Phillips. Those 4 guys we're going to go after hard, try to get one of those receivers, try to get Phillips. Rashid Shaheed, Boye Mafe, and Tariq Woolen, they're on our radar as former Seahawk players at positions of need that Kubiak will have some familiarity with that we might be able to bring in as well. Those are going to be our secondary wave of guys we're interested in at free agency. I also want to get a higher level backup quarterback that can enter the offseason as QB1 and realistically start games for us this season. So Kirk Cousins is going to be my first phone call, and then Marcus Mariota is going to be my fallback option that I'm targeting. In the draft, we are obviously taking Fernando Mendoza at 1. After that, we have 36 and 67. At 36, I'm looking for a right tackle. Blake Miller out of Clemson or Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. At 67, I'm debating best defensive player available or a wide receiver. We have a big gap between 67 and our next pick at 102, and I'm worried we could miss on a difference-making wide receiver if we wait until 102. So this will most likely depend on how free agency goes. If we can fill out the defense with enough pieces via free agency, I'll feel more comfortable going 3 straight picks on offense. But if we nab Pierce and Shaheed, for example, but only Phillips in free agency, then I'd lead an offender here. But definitely prioritizing a future right tackle at 36. On day three, I'm filling out the defensive roster and just seeing kind of what sticks. I'll just throw names in the hat basically with those 7 day 3 picks. So Ben, take whatever point of view you want here. The main things are I'm trying to bring in some of my own guys back for cheap. I'm hitting wide receiver and edge rusher heavy in free agency, but then I'm hitting right tackle, quarterback, and possibly wide receiver again heavy in the draft. What do you think about this plan for the Raiders?
Yeah, I like this plan for the Raiders. A lot of detail there, right? I mean, man, you covered probably 40 different players and, every position on the team there. So it's a lot of detail, but generically, I like the plan. The biggest thing that stood out to me is that you were emphatic about keeping Max Crosby, and I have that same emotion. I mean, I really do. You know, I'm one of the leaders. I'm probably at the highest end of the spectrum of trade a guy so you can get a lot for him. But I really only want to do that when I can tell that he is starting to get to the end of his career, and I don't want to pay him a bunch of money when he's lost a step. So I'd rather trade him a year before he loses a step. That does not appear to be the case with Max Crosby. As far as I can tell, this guy looks like he's got another 3 or 4 top seasons in him. And when's the last time you had a guy that was this in love with the Raiders? And it, it's been rough for the franchise for decades now, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, if there's a problem between the franchise and Crosby, then the problem was with the franchise, and the franchise needs to correct itself. And I realize that you could cash Crosby in for quite a bit, right? But this guy is so good. He is so committed. He makes the rest of the defense better and he's just perfect for the Raiders. So yeah, there's no way I'm letting this guy go. If things have disintegrated and gotten bad, then I'm gonna go have a man-to-man talk with him and tell him I'm sorry. We're gonna fix this, all right? This is not, one of those instances where the player is a bit of a problem or a headache or anything. I mean, nothing like that. So yeah, for all those reasons, I'm absolutely keeping Max Crosby, and we're gonna keep building with the other assets that we have. But that was the one thing that really stood out right there, right off the bat.
And Crosby is, what is he? I think he's 29 right now. And he's got a great contract for multiple years. So it's not like this is the last chance he's going to be able to be traded, right? If you're thinking about it from that point of view. I just take the lesson that the Commanders taught us 2 years ago, the Patriots just taught us this year, even the Bears taught us this year. When you get the right young quarterback in and the right coach and play caller combo with him, things can turn around fast. And if I've already got a Max Crosby in the building when that happens, then that's one less thing I need to do later. Even if he's not, and it's not like the version of Max Crosby that like loses a step, I don't think makes him a dramatically different player. So if you're like, oh, well, this defense won't be ready for 2 years and he's not going to be the same player. Well, it's not like he's an 18 and a half sack a year guy and now I'm going down to 14. He's a 12, 13, 14 sack a year guy, but it's everything else about him that makes him special. And even that is going to be a guy like what Khalil Mack is right now for the Chargers, right? And he's 6 years older than Crosby. So if I've got that kind of runway and Mack is still the player that's going to get $20 million in free agency this season, um, yeah, I'm just gonna hang on to him. Peyton almost convinced me to let go of Crosby, and even writing this up, I was like, man, that's a lot of picks you don't have there between 67 and what 102 or whatever I said. But um, yeah, that's a player I want to have instead of getting so close and being like, I wish I had a Max Crosby.
It's so rare that franchises even have a heart and soul player. I mean, even the good franchises don't typically have a guy right off the bat. It's about 50-50 that you just know this is the guy that the fans and everybody just, identifies with. But that's Max Crosby, and it's for the Raiders of all teams.
Yeah, exactly. All right, should we get to the Kansas City Chiefs?
Let's do it, man.
All right, Kansas City Chiefs cap space. This has been recently updated to negative 10 million in effective cap space, so they still have some work to do. Draft picks just six in total. Picks 9, 40, 74, 109, 146, and 176. Current roster. We just restructured Patrick Mahomes and released edge rusher Mike Dana. We can save an additional $22 million and $12 million respectively by restructuring Chris Jones and Trey Smith. I'm not cutting Jawan Taylor or Jalen Moore. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, Chiefs fans. This is our offensive line. Restructuring Jones and Smith gives us the ability to get in the black, re-sign Kelsey, and maybe something else after that. Now that Mike Dana has been released, I probably don't also have to restructure Trey Smith. If you want to just get cap compliant and bring back Travis Kelsey, you just restructure Chris Jones and then you're done. Maybe if we do Trey Smith, we can bring back one of our receivers for depth and maybe one of our defensive players. That's something that when I wrote this up, Mike Dana hadn't been released yet. That happened just before we started recording. So maybe as we talk through some of our own free agents, we bring back one more guy for Trey Smith. You can tell me if you think that trade off makes sense. Restructuring Trey Smith, maybe bring back one of those defenders. Um, but I would like to bring one of our wide receivers back for depth. Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown. One of those guys to kind of be a number four would be good. We have a lot of our running back room and our defensive back room entering free agency. The DBs were always prepared to lose. And at running back, I might be able to get Pacheco back for cheap. And if I wants to come back to camp for the minimum and see if he ends up making the roster, that's fine. We could throw a minimum deal at him. But defensive backs, we draft and develop all the time. We just took Noel Williams last year, right? Like we're always drafting and developing defensive backs in Kansas City under Spags. So we're comfortable letting those guys go, quite frankly. Free agency, we don't have much going on, but securing a good backup quarterback is a must, so we don't have to rush Mahomes back from his injury right away. Carson Wentz played well enough last year in Minnesota and was here just in 2024. That's someone I'm interested in bringing back again for the right price, of course. Um, if you, Ben, let me go ahead and just interject here since this is new, right? Mike Dana was just released this afternoon. We're recording this Wednesday at 10 p.m. Um, if we had to take that extra 10 million from Mike Dana, let's say I keep this plan I made the same. Chris Jones is $22 million goes to getting cap compliant and bring back Travis Kelsey. Trey Smith's $12 million goes to one of those receivers and Isaiah Pacheco, right? Let's just say that all that's kind of where that's going. And then Mike Dana, $10 million. Would you rather I gave that to Leo Chenal or Jalen Watson?
That's a great question. I'd probably lean Watson, but it's kind of a toss up for me. Kansas City's shown an ability to, kind of handle both position groups, quite honestly.
Yeah. Even I don't think the Mike Dana thing really truly does too much. If anything, it probably just stops them from restructuring Trey Smith as well. That's going to be my ultimate guess. So we'll say that Trey Smith doesn't get restructured. Chris Jones gets restructured. That gets done what we need to get done. Free agency, we're not really doing much from an external free agent standpoint after that. In the draft, back to the war room, at 9, we need the most explosive offensive player we can get. Carnell Tate, Micaiah Lemon, Jeremiah Love, Jordan Tyson. At 40, I'm looking at a defensive lineman, Zion Young, R. Mason Thomas, Kristen Miller are possibilities there. At 74, I'll take a receiver if we end up with Love at number 9. And if we end up with a receiver at 9, we'll take a tight end, like an Eli Stowers or Max Clare. What do you think about this plan for the Chiefs?
I do want to say real quick for the audience, depending on when you watch these videos, things will change fast over the next
Hmm.
few weeks. So, if you watch it 1 week from now, some of the things we've already been discussing tonight may have already happened, right?
Yep.
So just a heads up on that. Simon, do you hear that?
Oh.
It's your phone ringing.
Oh no.
Better pick it up.
Hang on, Ben. Let me switch over here. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, this is Patrick Mahomes, man. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, Patrick. How you doing, bud? What's going on?
Not so good. Look, have you seen my stats the past 3 years, man? All right, look, hey, here it is. 23, 4,100 yards.
Hmm.
24, I had 3,900 yards.
Hmm.
25, I had 3,600 yards. Have you
Hmm.
seen my touchdowns the past 3 years?
Hmm.
It's 27, it's 26, and 22.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know how good I am, right?
Hmm.
Listen, all offense this year, okay? I mean, free agents, draft, we're gonna trade up, right? We're gonna trade up from like 2 and 3 all the way up in the first round to get another first round pick. And like we're gonna trade our future first because we don't need them. Like like the Rams, we're gonna F those picks. It's all in, right? So we're gonna get
Hmm.
this offense fixed. We're gonna get
Right, right,
me
right.
everything I need. We're, we're blowing up the offense, right? Good. All right, I'm gone. See ya.
Pretty much. That's pretty much what's happening here. What are we missing? What are we missing? Do you just miss my trade up to 4 for Carnell Tate that I did in the first mock? Is that the main issue here?
if you're Patrick Mahomes, there's a certain bit of accountability, right? I don't think he's quite the same guy he was 4 years ago,
Hmm.
but he hasn't dropped off that much. So you have to start looking back at, well, they started making more defensive investments and allowing me
Yeah.
to kind of suffer a little bit. Ego aside, everybody wants to win. So yeah, I'm sure Patrick would be all in favor of letting Spagnola kind of figure it out for a year while he has a few more toys to play with, in any position on the offense.
What does that look like? Does that like what can they do with Chris Jones? They can't do anything with Chris Jones. I mean, can what if they post you want him? No, even that doesn't do anything. What do you like? What do you want to do here? What do you want to do here?
The funny thing is, I'll just say this real quick. I mentioned on the Raiders thing we just did. I'm an advocate of getting rid of a guy before he loses a step. Well, 2 years ago, they re-signed Chris Jones, and I told them to let him go. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a perfect example. And I even said on there, I said, hey, y'all may carry him to another Super Bowl, or he may carry y'all to another Super Bowl, but after that, the drop off is there, and you're still paying for it. He's
Right.
still a good player, but he's not what he was. And now you're kind of, I say, stuck with him. Listen, I'm sure this is no surprise to them, but you never know when that drop off's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys at 34, they're still pretty close to what they were, and he's not. So, that's always the danger.
They save they wouldn't help themselves by cutting him really pre or post June 1. If they traded him, they'd get 15 million. But would you rather trade him, save 15, maybe get like what, a third round pick, fourth round pick? Or would you rather restructure him to have him on the roster and save an additional 7 million on top of that 15, save the 22?
Yeah, you've got several different choices there. So, that it does go back, and I'll even relate this to the Kirk Cousins thing with the Falcons and when they drafted Michael Penix. My biggest problem with the whole Falcons thing was that they actually gave Kirk Cousins that much money in the first place.
Hmm.
So my biggest problem here is that the Chiefs, they're not dumb. They've been doing this a long time.
Hmm.
They willingly decided to hand Chris Jones the money 2 years
Hmm.
ago, knowing that at some point a fall off was coming. So here it is. You've got plenty of options, but you have no perfect clean out here. And that really is the point. And that goes back to long-term planning versus, hey, just planning for next year. It's a huge difference between GMs and people that just want to assist, right?
If the Chiefs get Cardinal Tate, Makai Lemon, Jeremiah Love, or Jordan Tyson, do you feel like that's satisfactory for getting that infusion on offense that they need?
Just for the one pick, yes. No,
Hmm.
I feel like they do need to add to that. But
Right.
yeah, any of those four guys would infuse something into this offense. I don't think there's any question.
If you can get, let's talk about, do the stacking conversation. Oh, and I guess I did say second round, get a defensive lineman, right? So something different at 40 also is maybe what we're thinking. If we could get, do you, we're getting really into the weeds here. And 9 is high for Sadiq. I know everybody wants to give them Sadiq just because like Travis Kelce maybe on the way out, Sadiq on the way in feels clean. But like, do you like Sadiq even at 9 or even maybe with a small trade back with one of those wide receivers they can get at 40 and then maybe like a more traditional tight end at 74? Or are you shooting yourself in the foot by not just taking one of those receivers at 9?
I'd certainly explore the options of trading back a little bit and trying to catch Sadiq because to
Mm-hmm.
me it's worth the risk of then losing Sadiq,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's still some other good wide receivers floating
You
around
get that
both in the
next tier
first and second
receiver.
round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm okay, and I'm willing to run that risk. I would rather do that than take Sadiq at 9, to be honest.
Last one here, just because I'm fascinated, and talking to Ben about the Chiefs is always a great time. So, if they miss out on the receivers, but Jeremiah Love is there, does that still feel good? If I won't lead you because I think I know what you're going to say anyways. But does that still feel like okay, we can take our offense in the direction we need with Jeremiah Love kind of being the centerpiece of what we bring in this offseason?
Hey, to my way of thinking, not Chiefs concentrated, the answer would be yes. But when I look back at the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, my answer would be no on that. for a Chiefs specific? Because it almost feels like it balances the universe, right? To give such a good
Hmm.
running back to a team that would, has everything else, right? Or has had everything else over the years. But no, honestly, it feels like Mahomes' passing attack take advantage of the big arm and Andy Reid's creative mindset doing more than just adding a sixth tight end. It feels like they need to get back to the larger downfield attack, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe if I'm gonna appease one Patrick Mahomes there on that phone call, he said, "Oh, you want a defensive lineman with that second round pick? Just take that second round pick, trade it to Cleveland, and so you can take the first receiver at six." That would probably make him feel good.
And to be clear, the caricatures we're running through here tonight, those are funny glimpses into what those people might be feeling.
Of
Those are
course,
not necessarily reflective of what you and I as general managers would be doing.
100%. If I get a chance to dig into Ben more about the Chiefs, I'm gonna do it. It's not gonna feel like that for everyone. But we'll see. Maybe it will. Let's find out. Los Angeles Chargers are up next, everybody. Cap space for the Chargers, 78 million in effective cap space. Whoo, boy. Draft picks, six in total, 22, 55, 86, 123, 203, and 214. Current roster. For the amount of cap space we have, our roster is in pretty good shape. We will be re-signing Khalil Mack, Deshaun Hand, and Tony Jefferson on defense. We'll have talks with Odafe Owe, but he could get expensive. On offense, Keenan Allen is a free agent, and we'll monitor what he wants to do, but we'd love to have him back. Obviously, the biggest need is on the offensive line. Not only talent, but all five actual backups, who ended up mostly being starters this year, plus Zion Johnson, are all free agents. Not to mention center Bradley Bozeman retired just a couple days ago. We're going to let Johnson walk. Now, I've seen Chargers beat writers really want Johnson back. And I like Johnson pre-draft. And if they're telling me things are we're trending in the right direction at the end of the year, that's great. But things were so bad on that offensive line, and Johnson has taken a really long time to develop. I'm probably going to let him walk and try to get a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe like Kevin Dotson it, right? The way he just kind of left the Steelers, even though it was okay in Pittsburgh, and then he blossomed so elsewhere. Um, but versatile backups like Trey Pipkins and Jamari Sawyer, we'll try to bring them back for cheap if they don't get, big ticket contracts somewhere else. Um, so I'm bringing back Khalil Mack, Deshaun Hand, Tony Jefferson for that defense. I'm going to try and bring back Owe if he's not too expensive. The offensive line, I'm letting Zion Johnson walk, but Pipkins and Sawyer I'll try to bring back for cheap as versatile backups. In free agency, I'm pulling from the Chiefs and Bears playbook of completely overhauling my interior offensive line via one offseason. And I'm throwing big money at Tyler Linderbaum first. Though I expect him to go to New York with John Harbaugh or stay in Baltimore, where reportedly Eric DaCosta just straight up said, like, we offered him a market setting contract. So, like, maybe that's just going to do it, right? But better believe I'm also going to throw that same amount of money at him and say, hey, I'm still a Harbaugh. Come out here in California with Justin Herbert and let's go get it. If I don't get Linderbaum, here's where I get to do it, Ben. I'm signing Cade Mays out of Carolina. Uh, Cade Mays was a guy that late day three draft pick for Carolina, versatile offensive lineman, played tackle in college, played center, like five position flexibility. Ended up starting like half the season at center, I think last year and maybe this year. Um, Good player, Mauler, Harbaugh would love him. Huge. I would love to put him at center in Los Angeles if I can't get Linderbaum. Next, I'm looking at guards. Both Cleveland guards, Teller and Petonio, are on my list. Probably don't want to risk bringing them both with injury history and age, but if I can get one, awesome. But if I end up with both, could do worse. We'll check them out for health before we make any big offers. So obviously, some other old guys, Kevin Zeitler, Greg Van Roten, those are also on our list. Here's my other guy, Ben, Brady Christensen. Those are our backup options after that. I just want big, tough, mean guards in LA right now to push people around. I'm interested in keeping Mekhi Becton around, if he ends up being a backup, even at his price. He's got a pretty good contract right now, but if he just ends up being a swing tackle depth piece, that's fine. But if I need to cut him later on the offseason to make the money work, I will. If Slater and Alt are healthy, and my line is Slater, Joel Bitonio, Linderbaum or Mays, Christensen or Teller, and Alt from left to right, and Pipkins, Sawyer, Becton, and I don't know, insert some run-of-mill backup center here. I'm actually pretty happy with that group going into 2026. Offensive line can get expensive in free agency, but I should still have money to spend. I could make big defensive swings like an outside corner or a linebacker, or overpay for a third edge rusher. Could just be a Dafe Owe. I could make another big swing at wide receiver if we end up letting Keenan Allen walk. Uh, but my priority is going to be on the offensive line, get that done quickly, and then just kind of see what's left after that. In the draft, depending on what happens in free agency, we're in good shape to take best player available. At 22, if I can get Vega Ione from Penn State, I will, no matter what happens in free agency. If I could sign all those guards, and if Vega's there at 22, I'm taking him. But assuming he's gone, I'm targeting a corner at 2022. So Jamal McCoy, Avion Terrell, or Colton Hood. At 55, if Keenan Allen is back and I don't make a play in free agency at wide receiver, I'm looking at receiver at 55. And if we go younger via free agency, I'll opt for a defensive player. So probably front seven if I were to do that. And at 86, I'll start looking at safeties and whatever position I don't take at 55. So wide receiver is going to happen at some point. Defensive front seven is going to happen at some point. Safety is going to happen at some point. But I'm probably looking at corner at 22 for the Chargers. How do you feel about this plan for LA?
Yeah, the part I like best, it's the most fun here, is when you're talking about Linderbaum, who may not leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
He may never hit free agency. I wouldn't be surprised. But if he were to, and y'all could get him, the Chargers, I mean, and then pairing Linderbaum with Iwane, the Penn State guard from from the draft, that would be a lot of fun. You can certainly imagine those two guys forming the middle of an offensive line for Harbaugh and company. That would just be perfect synergy. And then, pairing them with the uber talented Slater and Alt, both coming back, historically coming back from injuries and trying to battle back. But man, you talk about a mean offensive line and a talented one. That would be just amazing. I mean, that would be fantastic. So I love the idea of that. But you're right. Even if Linderbaum doesn't become available, which again, I don't know that he will be. Everybody's got to do their due diligence and be ready for it, but I don't know that he will be. Mays or Christensen, either one. I know those aren't popular names. Matter of fact, if you haven't watched the Carolina Panthers play, you may not have even known who these guys were. And that's fine. They're blended offensive linemen, but go check out their tape. They're good, solid players, man. And they would certainly, I think, excel under Harbaugh as well. So yeah, working on that offensive line. It is a bit frustrating for me because the Chargers have done so much work on offensive line even before Harbaugh
Yeah.
got here. And so when this year kind of progressed through, and I'm like, dang it, do they really need offensive line? And you start looking at it and you're like, well, yeah, they do a little bit. So, I'm not suggesting that they should jettison all those offensive linemen, but certainly you would love to, infiltrate some more talent and toughness there. And I think that's going to happen at some point this year.
And even for the people that I was listening to that remarked on Johnson's improvement through the year, it was in the run game. It's like, that's great. But I need Justin Herbert to be Justin Herbert all the time, right? And if we're still like Johnson's biggest thing, and it has been since he's been in the league, is reading stunts and games from defensive linemen and keeping his head on a swivel and not getting beat with his eyes. And if Herbert's just taking like sacks up the middle every time, even if Johnson's getting better as a run blocker, like that's not going to help me. That's why I'm looking at those veterans. That's why I'm looking at these guys that are a little bigger, a little more stout. Think about when the Bills went out and let Mitch Morse go. And this was like maybe a year after they let Roger Saffold go. Morse is a smaller player. Saffold is more of a run blocker. And they got Osiris Torrance, 6'4", 330, who just like doesn't move. They got who not Connor Williams. Who's the center that they got from Dallas? Whoever that is.
McGovern.
Um, was that?
Is it McGovern? Is that who
Yes,
we're
Connor
thinking of?
McGovern. Thank you. Thinking of the other Connor from Dallas, and David Edwards from come from LA. Those guys are 6'4", 6'5", 320 plus, right? Those are just big, tall dudes that just like maybe aren't the most flexible and everything in the run game, but they're just big maulers, great anchors. That's kind of what I want. That's kind of what I'm going for here. If I don't get someone like Linderbaum who doesn't fit that, but he's just so talented, then just give me like big guys that are going to hold the pocket for Herbert, and maybe we sacrifice a little bit in the run game. But that's why you end up drafting an Amari and Hampton, right? Okay, you at least give him the holes, let him create the stuff beyond the line of scrimmage, even if your guys aren't going to get out and do a bunch of stuff after that. And also, that's what Alton Slater are for. If those guys can just freaking be healthy, because they're awesome. Um, I wanted to ask you because you've done so much work on the receivers. If Keenan Allen retires or they let him walk, or even if they bring him on, but they want to draft somebody at 55, which of these names do you like for their receiver? I'm thinking about they have Lad McConkey as that like smaller route runner type. They have Quentin Johnston as that like kind of Z, like speed, tall, deep guy. And then if they have Keenan Allen working the intermediate or not, whatever. But Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, Chris Bell out of Louisville, Elijah Surratt out of Indiana, or Chris Brazel out of Tennessee. Let's say out of those four guys, who would you like for LA at 55?
Honestly, I like all four of them, but it does feel like out of the guys they've got, yeah, a speed element there would help, which would
Hmm.
kind of put you more towards Zachariah Branch, who's small, but if you've already got the ability to kind of open the field up and create that underneath stuff,
Hmm.
I know McConkey's eating up some of that, but he's not he also works the outside. So, having a speed guy to do the crossing stuff or the jet sweeps, whatever,
Yeah.
Zachariah Branch can certainly fill that route.
Okay. All right. Ben on his channel with Austin and Jane, the Pro Football Enterprises, has a lot of prospect profiles on wide receivers, specifically up on Box Score Network. You'll find their work on defensive players, but you'll find the wide receivers specifically, but offensive players over there on their channel. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Let's go to the AFC West champs, AFC Conference runner-up, Denver Broncos. Cap space almost 25 million in effective cap space. Draft picks they have 8 in total. 30, 62, 94, 108, 130, 168, 247, 255. Current roster. Our roster is in great shape. After an excellent 2025 season, we had a top 5 defense for the second year in a row, and our offense outperformed expectations. We have a few key defensive free agents, but no one we expect to break the bank. Linebacker Alex Singleton and defensive lineman John Franklin Myers. Our guys will look to bring back, but aren't afraid to let walk if it gets too expensive as well. We have a good mix of veterans and young players still on the roster, even without them specifically at those positions to fill in and take their places. Plus, most of our focus needs to be on the offensive roster, anyways. Tight end Adam Troutman is a free agent, and we can bring him back pretty easy by cutting Evan Ingram if need be, just trade one salary for the other. But I don't think it would come to that. We probably could keep both if we wanted to. Uh, Left guard Ben Powers is a popular cut candidate because we would get good cap relief, and he spent most of last year out with the injury. But that's not really something I'm interested in since it's not something we need to do for where we are in our cap situation. In free agency, our focus will be to provide more answers to quarterback Bo Nix as he comes off of his injury with more playmakers. In free agency, we'll turn our efforts to running back, actually. J.K. Dobbins is a free agent, and he had a nice start to the season, but once again had his season cut short by injury. R.J. Harvey is nice, but he may be more of a complimentary back, similar to Darren Sproles in his heyday. We want to set our sights on Kenneth Walker. And if for some reason Brees Hall doesn't get tagged or he gets tagged and the Jets want to trade him, we'd be interested in that. But we want to get a real difference maker, playmaker, running back behind this offensive line. Um, in the wide receiver market is going to get expensive in free agency. There's interesting names, there's good names, but there's not that many. So we think those guys are going to get really expensive really fast. So I'd rather add a pass catcher in the draft based on the talent in both pools, right? I think there's wider talent, wider amount of talent in the draft at receiver than running back. So I'd rather pay a little expensive on running back because it's still going to be significantly cheaper than a wide receiver in free agency. I really think we can get, let's say, Ken Walker if the Seahawks let him go, plus Troutman, plus both defenders done with the cap we have if we really made everything kind of squeeze. In the draft, as I mentioned, I'm looking at pass catcher in the first round. I know we can get a wide receiver we like at 30, but if Kenyon Sadiq starts to slip into the 20s, I'll look to move up. We have that extra pick from the Saints at 108. If we trade our own third, we can get into the mid 20s. If we add our own fourth, we can maybe go up a bit higher. I think the Eagles at what's that 23. I think they're going to be probably our biggest competition. So if he gets to that 18, 19 range, we'll start calling about getting to 20, 21, 22. Um, let's see. Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston are also targets for us in that range. And if we fill the holes we need in free agency, I'm going to look to be pretty aggressive in terms of trading draft picks. At 62, though, I'm going to go defense. Can look at any level depending on what happens with our own free agents. But if we bring them all back, then I'll look at a safety like AJ Hulsey. If Franklin Myers or Singleton walk, I'll look in those directions though. With whatever mid round picks I have left over after my trades, I'll look at an offensive lineman. Ben Powers, who I mentioned before, is a free agent after this season, and Garrett Bowles is going to be 35 this year. So I want to make sure we have a young stable of offensive linemen kind of ready to go. Ben, how do you feel about this move for the Broncos?
Well, you're right about one thing for sure, right off the top. Denver's in a pretty good spot here, all things
Yeah.
considered. You know, so I
For as bad as things ended and the vibes of their end of the season, you kind of forget that, oh, they had an awesome year and their roster is pretty freaking good.
the one thing I'll stick with here is wide receivers because Bo Nix is producing, and part of that's due to he's a mature guy, and part of that's due to his footwork, and then the rest of it is that he can do what he's told. And Sean Payton has done a great job. Goodness gracious, fantastic job of putting him in spots where he can have open receivers and he can get rid of the ball quick and he can read half the field and he can do all these things. And so boy, Peyton's done a fantastic job and Nix has been a part of that. Having said that, Nix needs as much help as he can get. So when you're looking there at the wide receiver room, I'm all in favor of it. Whether it's Sadiq at tight end, most of y'all in the audience, you've seen Sadiq highlights, but if you haven't, go check them out. They're a lot of fun. And I'm with you, no matter where he's at, because you're in such a good spot with Denver, you can afford to trade up. What's it going to hurt you? It's not going to hurt you at all. So you could trade up for Sadiq. I'm fine with that. I would lean Concepcion over Boston myself
Hmm.
because Boston is not the greatest separator. It's not that he never separates, but at college you didn't see a lot of separation, and that's why he has so many tough catches. Is because the defender's always draped all over him, but he's making a lot of tough catches. I don't even care what speed Boston runs at the combine, to be honest, man. He's just not going to create a lot of separation at the NFL level. But Concepcion will, which works out perfect, whether it's Sadiq or Concepcion. Either of those guys, the speed, the athleticism, the ability to rip through zones at the NFL level is exactly what Bo Nix needs. Now he's already got some playmakers. They're not without guys,
Hmm.
but boy, if you could add another one on top of what they've got, and along with Sean Payton's tremendous work, that would really be great. So I would love to see Concepcion or Kenyon Sadiq coming out of there.
Yeah, Denver. Let's see, because I agree with you. I personally just like Concepcion better than Boston as well, or in general. But and I think like what's Troy Franklin's size? Because Pat Bryant is a little bit of that tall, bigger receiver as well.
Yeah.
I think Troy Franklin is too. What is he like? 6'1", 6'2", probably. Um, yeah, 6'2". So like I think you have the Boston mold in those guys. And then Sutton is your crossers X like uh, do everything kind of guy. And Concepcion would really bring that souped up, supercharge everything else. Um, which again is the version that you need with what Bo Nix is as a quarterback. Um, all right, cool. Denver Broncos. So let's see. Now let's move to our next division here. We have the NFC East. So we're going to start with the team with the worst, or best draft pick, I should say, in the NFC East, and that's the New York Giants. So here we go. New York Giants, effective cap space, negative 5 million in effective cap space. It's a very bad number to be as bad as this team is. Draft picks, 7 picks, but just two in the top 100. That is a heck of a mug there, Ben. My God, look like out of a candle holder. Uh, 7 picks, but just two in the top 100 for the Giants. Picks 5 and 37, then 105, 143, 185, 191, 192. So that all sounds real dire, right? Talking about a team with the fifth overall pick, things went so bad, and they are negative 5 mil in cap space and have two picks in the top 100 is rough. But John Harbaugh makes us feel much better. So let's start at the bottom of the roster with what we're going to do to get cap compliant. Graham Gano, Devin Singletary, James Hudson, gone. That's going to clear 15 mil in cap space easy. Now I have some bigger decisions to make. Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Bobby Okereke. Three big names on this defense that I had high expectations for. I, Simon, probably also I, the New York Giants, but severely underperformed the last couple of years. Thibodeau is on his fifth year option, so all of his money is guaranteed unless we can trade him. I'm betting we can get a third round pick for him and clear an additional 14.5 million space. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to fill in that gap between 37 and 105 by trading Thibodeau. Next, instead of cutting Okereke, I'm going to restructure Brian Burns and create almost an additional 16 million in cap. So now I've gotten to about 40 million in cap space and added a draft pick. I feel really good about what I can do with that. From here, I can make things happen. In addition to that, last year's starting slot receiver, right guard, right tackle, linebacker 2, and CB2 are all free agents. I have an in-house option that I'm going with at right guard. However, it's second-year player Marcus Mbow, who we both like. Now, on top of that, I do need an upgrade at center and tight end, even though I have guys on the roster for that. So that's a lot of things going on with this roster. But I'm going to cut those lower level guys to create some cap. I'm going to try to trade Thibodeau, and I'm going to go ahead and restructure Brian Burns. In free agency, I'm going to roll all that money into bringing over just about as many Ravens free agents as I can. Priority one, I've mentioned him before on this pod, is Tyler Linderbaum. Getting him to not only improve the play of the line, but also be a force field and eagle eye for Jackson Dart is a must for me. After that, I have to decide between Isaiah Likely as a quote unquote external guy and Wandale Robinson as a quote unquote internal guy. I want one of those pass catchers to be in New York next year, and I'm going to lean Likely since I have two useful to very good receivers in Slayton and Neighbors. There's no good way to create cap space by moving on from Slayton, so the Giants are just going to have to keep him once again for another year and be okay with a pretty good wide receiver on the roster for not bad money. If I can't get Likely for one reason or another, I'll go back to trying to get Wandale Robinson. Um, and listen, this is one of those things where we don't know how Likely actually feels about Harbaugh. We don't know how he actually feels about the Ravens, so we don't know. Like maybe he's like, great, Harbaugh's gone. I want to stay in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Maybe he's like, Todd Monken's gone. Great, I want to stay in Baltimore because I like my apartment. Um, or maybe he's like, man, I loved John Harbaugh, so I'm going to go to New York no matter what. We have, at least I have no idea. So I don't know, but I'm going to go after him either way. Um, After that, some other Ravens that I'm interested in. Uh, Here are all their other free agents: Daniel Faalele, Kyle Van Noy, Keaton Mitchell, Charlie Kolar, Brent Urban, Patrick Ricard, Ardarius Washington, and Aloy Gilman. Marlon Humphrey is also a potential cap casualty for Baltimore this season. From this list, Van Noy as a Thibodeau replacement is a high priority. Get him as a number three for his play on the field and ability to mentor Abdul Carter. I love that. Marlon Humphrey, if he becomes available, would be a great CB2 for us. Ricard could really help in the run game, and reuniting him with Greg Roman just seems like a perfect opportunity. Um, Washington, Mitchell, and Kolar would be more depth, and Urban would be more of like a training camp mentor guy before I offer him a coaching job at cutdowns instead of just cutting him outright. Faalele, don't have a spot for him on the roster, and I don't think Gilman would actually leave Baltimore. I think he gets to stay where he was just traded, but reunites with Jesse Minter. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to try and fill in edge three, CB2, and center and tight end upgrades via free agency there. In the draft, the holes that are left are right tackle and linebacker. Right tackle, I'm addressing at 5. I have a really good feeling that Spencer Fano or Francisco Mauinoa are going to be available there, and I'm going to take either one, plug them right in at right tackle. The Raiders are going to go Mendoza at 1. Then there's New York at 2 and Tennessee at 4. They both have young right tackles already that were first round picks. So Arizona could take one of those guys, and I think we get the other one at 5, and we're going to be happy with it. At pick 37, I'll start looking at linebacker. This could be a great CJ Allen or Anthony Hill Jr. spot. With my pick that I acquired for Thibodeau, I'm looking at a wide receiver to replace Wandale Robinson. Antonio Williams out of Clemson would be a perfect replacement as a shifty slot receiver type. His crazy would also match the crazy that the team is building with, Dart and Scatabo, and I just think that would be perfect for the and Harbaugh. Talk about his crazy, the vibe we're building there. I think Williams would fit perfectly with. And then at 105, I'll look for a young corner to develop behind Humphrey because he still gets burned deep. He has his good moments, and he's probably better at the slot at this point. But I have a slot that I like in Drew Phillips. But I think I can get Humphrey out there for a year and draft his future replacement maybe at 105. Ben, how do you feel about this plan for New York?
Let me address the what I thought was the obvious thing, and that is the idea of bringing over some Baltimore Ravens guys, as many as possible, right? In general, I've seen people try to do that before at the NFL level, and in general, I don't like it. But in this case, I love it. So let me talk about why I usually haven't liked it, and that is usually you have an assistant going from one successful place going to a place that hasn't been successful and trying to pull over some of those players and try to copy what they did at the other place. And that usually doesn't work. We've seen it twice at least where people left the Patriots and tried to establish the Patriot way
Hmm.
at some other location, which is difficult to do, first of all, because you don't have Belichick's brains or Brady's arm, right? But even then, what they basically ended up doing was pulling up ex-Patriots players that the Patriots didn't want to play anymore and overpaying them, which is actually the opposite of the Patriot way. So, that's one reason why a lot of that stuff didn't work. It's flooding the college ranks right now. We are seeing so many successful programs right now where they hire coaches from a lower division school, and those coaches drag about half the team with them to that higher division school, and it is usually been very successful at the college level. We haven't seen it as much at the NFL level, but I love it here with Harbaugh coming over from the Ravens. He's established his own success there in Baltimore, and those players have been successful in Baltimore. And then you add that to what is at least some sparks of promise here in New York and some younger players. I think that's a great mix, and I think that will absolutely totally work here. So that's a great kind of a start here for the New York Giants' first offseason under Harbaugh.
If you're the Giants, are you hoping for Fano or Maui Noah at 5?
I'd rather have Fano myself. I'm not suggesting that Fano is brilliant at pass blocking, but he holds up, and that's an important difference. And if you watch him, of course, if you watch him at run blocking, it's just so much fun to watch him do that. So, a guy who's brilliant at run blocking in terms of athleticism, pulling, trapping, zone blocking, wherever you want him to go, he's going to go do it, and he'll hold up at pass blocking. That's the guy I would prefer.
Is there a different thing you would do at 5 for them? I know some people think like wide receiver would be interesting, especially with Neighbors coming off the injury. Would you go another way?
I would be wide open. The Giants are one of the teams I would be wide open with almost any direction they went because they could use the help. They could use the help in several different places. Adding Carnell Tate to this offense or Jordan Tyson, I would prefer
Hmm.
Tate, but Tate or Tyson, either one would help. Neighbors is still a very good receiver when healthy, but it's probably going to take him a little bit of time to work back into shape. You'd love to have Jackson Dart get all the help he can get too, right? I mean, if we're going to add receivers to the Kansas City Chiefs for Patrick Mahomes, why wouldn't we do it for Jackson Dart here in the New York Giants, right? But, offensive line makes a ton of sense here as well.
All right, let's get to the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders have 67 million in effective cap space as of right now. Draft picks they have 6, but just 2 in the top 140. They have picks 7, 71, 145, 186, 197, 224. So not a lot of draft capital to work with. Those picks went to, obviously getting Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. I think Marshawn Lattimore's trade is still paying some dividends or lack thereof um, in these picks. But they get 6 picks, and picking one in the top 10 will be helpful. Current roster for Washington. Things got rough last year, no doubt. Injuries to Jaden Daniels, lack of defensive consistency slash identity, age all over the roster, and dissension in the coaching slash management ranks. But the roster is actually still kind of in decent shape, and we have a lot of cap space. We have several free agents who were on second or third units last year, but a lot of our best starters are still locked in to contracts on the team. We have our quarterback, our wide receiver one, 4/5 of our offensive line starters, plus 2 decent depth pieces that can start if need be. A couple defensive tackles and two young corners that we like anywhere to from fine enough to a lot. The best free agents we'd consider retaining are all guys we might let walk in an effort mostly just to get younger. Zach Ertz coming off of that big injury, Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, and Debo Samuel. Um, Ertz, we would like let him just kind of go out and recover. I'm sure he's not signing anywhere until that knee is fully recovered. It might not even be until after the season starts, and we'll monitor that situation for sure. Um, Bobby Wagner will find a let walk, so we can really focus on nailing down that position for the long term, like a way we haven't in a while. Um, Debo is someone we're genuinely interested in bringing back since he'd likely be in the second or third tier free agent wide receiver, so he shouldn't cost too much money. Von Miller would be fine for cheap as well for depth, but we still need a true piece at edge. And then to create additional space outside corner, Marshawn Lattimore, strong cut candidate. We'd save an additional 18.5 million cap space, but it just hasn't worked out. We traded for him, injuries, poor play. I know we need corners. I know we already have cap, but it might just be a opportunity where both sides are like, hey, this didn't work out. Let's walk away and both try to move on to something better. Um, Left guard Patrick Paul was last year's starter. He's a free agent. We could retain him as well. He played well enough. He probably wouldn't cost too much. Um, but we will, look at some other options or see what his price point is. We won't mind letting him walk if we need to, but we'll try to bring him back. Andrew Wiley, Nick Allegretti, Brandon Coleman are all fine backup options. If we had to plug any of those guys into guard for a season or for a short period of time while we get a mid round rookie ready, that sort of thing. In free agency, with our top needs being receiver, corner, edge, and linebacker, we'll look to address each of those. Along with bringing back Debo and maybe Von Miller, I'll look for a role player at wide receiver and then maybe a starting caliber edge rusher. We can and will make a run at slightly younger players like Jalen Phillips and Odafe Oweh, but I'm definitely kicking the tires on Trey Hendrickson. I know we want to get younger, and we will overall, but Edge needs to be supercharged this year, and Trey is someone who can get over 15 sacks in 2026. So this maybe feels a little counterproductive to talk about getting younger, letting those guys walk that I did. But Trey at 32 and still playing good football. I know he was hurt last year, but that was also just a bad Bengals team. I'd be interested in bringing it in depending on the money. I'm also looking at corner. Jalen Watson and Greg Newsome are guys that first come to mind. If Dan Quinn is going to stick to zones and Durante Jones, being the new DC, is bringing some of that funky blitz stuff from Minnesota, I want zone cover corners who can have their head on a swivel. Newsome has played best in zone, and Watson comes from the Spags school in Kansas City, so he's used to adjusting and having all sorts of funky things happening all around him. So those guys I'm interested in. Tariq Woolen and Eric Stokes are also guys that kick the tires on, but I view them probably at least Woolen more as a man corner. And I do also like Roger McCreary, but we probably don't want three undersized corners all out there at the same time, even if they're all pretty good. So Newsome and who's the other guy I said, and Jalen Watson are definitely our priorities. At linebacker, I have a lot of options, but again, I want to get younger. So that narrows my pool. There's a lot of veteran over 30 linebackers, but linebackers specifically, I want to be in the younger age group on. So Leo Chenal would be a really fun fit in a Minnesota style defense, even if he's a little redundant to a Frankie Louvu. I'm sure the Packers are going to pay Quay Walker, but I might be willing to jack up the price and make them pay a little bit more if it means a chance of getting him. Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, they're also pedigree guys who got better over the years. Christian Harris also dealt with injuries in his time in Houston. He kind of fell out of that rotation with all those linebackers, but he's a guy I'm looking to take a swing on. My goal is to sign two of those guys and just see who kind of sticks and comes to camp, plays well, or emerges out of it. In the draft, with the seventh pick, I'm taking the best defensive player available, preferably one of the edge rushers. Vel Reese, I should say, Ruben Bain, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, Caleb Downs. It's tough to have as few picks as we do where we have them, but that pick in particular is in a good spot for us this year to get one of those guys. At 71, I'm looking at receiver. With all that attention I've paid to the defense so far through this process, I needed another swing at a young guy to catch the ball. Pick your poison in that range. And you can tell me who your flavor is here. Maybe one ring down from the names we talked about with the Chargers: Jeremy Bernard, Antonio Williams, Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, whoever. Then in my 4 day 3 picks, I'm looking for one young offensive lineman, then back to the defensive well for depth. So Ben, You cover the Commanders extensively over on your channel with Robert Fire. Again, shout out Pro Football Enterprises. Um, Talk to me about this plan for the Commanders and what you think.
Yeah, listen, the defense needs a lot of help. So does the wide receiver room. You mentioned all that. Let's talk finances here. Marshawn Lattimore, his 24 season was okay. There were some good games on there. His real struggles were that there were two games against very talented, bigger receivers that he struggled against, but the 24 season was okay. The 25 season was bad, and that was before the injury. The 25 season was really, really, really bad play by him. There's no other way to describe it. I can't speak for all Commanders fans, but I can speak for us too. It is time for Lattimore to go. And I don't care if we trade him or not. It is time to go. I mean, we don't even want him on the roster anymore at all, not at a reduced rate, no rate, gone.
Nope.
I mean,
Mhm.
$18 million. It was really bad in 25. And now we also have the injury. Nothing against him personally, but just on field and business, we're done, man. And that's just that's based on him being a huge. He was supposed to be one of the leaders of the 25 defense. And instead, he was one of the reasons that it was so horribly, atrociously, abominably bad, and including about a 4 or 5 week stretch there where they almost literally hindered nothing from a defensive standpoint. You know, you had the Lions and the Cowboys that just absolutely roasted them for, to the tune of 40 points. I mean, it was really bad. Another guy there is Deron Payne, who really needs to go. He's got like a $27 million cap hit. We can let him go and save about, I don't know, 16 $17 million right off the top, just straight up cut. Deron Payne is usually good for about 3.5 to 4 sacks, a season. And for defensive tackle, that's not bad, but it's not good either. He had 2 games at the start of the year where he played out of his mind. I mean, he was fantastic. We were like, wow, this guy is coming and he is ready. And then it all just disappeared, and it wasn't there. And we got a whole lot more of the Deron Payne we were used to. Basically, Deron Payne has had one tremendous season in his career, and the rest have all been very pedestrian. And, really, I don't see where he's worth $12 million, much less the 27 that they are slated to pay him. So, there's a guy there. I don't know if we could trade him for a seventh round pick, but I doubt it, honestly. That's just the way that's going to work. So as bad as the defense is, those two guys were supposed to be leaders and they weren't. I mean, they just did not get the job done. It's time to move on from those two guys. That will help us also get younger and it will free up what is that 16 and probably 17. That's a good $33 million in cap space that you can then, which by the way, free agency isn't what it was 10 years ago. We know that. You're not looking at difference makers. You are looking at guys who maybe they're plus side guys. Most of them. Most of them are actually solid starters, or hey, this is a really good rotational guy, is what you're getting in free agency. You have a handful of plus side and difference making kind of guys. It is small. So it's not like you're going to get drastically better in free agency necessarily, but at least you can get rid of a couple of expensive and vastly underperforming guys. So, those are two things that would certainly help everything you're talking about right there.
So if we, because Deron Payne, if you do that, now we have a whole defensive tackle as well that we need to work because they have here are the three of their six listed defensive tackles on our lads are all free agents as well, and none of those guys are coming in and saving the day. One, so Johnny Newton is still there. Javon Kinlaw was a starter this year. Um, if we did that, we open up all this extra cap space. How do we edit this plan a little? Because I hear you, I totally hear. I think that makes sense. Similar for reasons of moving on from Lattimore. Do we then shift the plan from okay, try to spread it around a little bit in free agency to let's spend big on multiple edge rushers and in the draft instead of looking at one of those edge rushers primarily at 7. And obviously, like this always sounds easy, right? Trade back a couple spots and take Peter Woods, or even just take Peter Woods at 7, right? Do you draft a young defensive tackle that I didn't mention in the draft plan and spend money because the defensive tackle free agent class is not great. It's like nice role players. So all that word salad. Let me create a coherent question for you. Would you rather move on from Payne and sign like a nice mid-tier defensive tackle just to kind of fill the spot and then still draft a high upside edge rusher at 7? Like let's say you can get Ruben Bain. You get Ruben Bain at 7 and you get I mean I can't even say like John Franklin Myers in good faith. I would need like a small step down from that. Let me try to pick one for you. Uh Doing this on the fly, doing this on the fly. Do 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 do. Let's say Greg Gaines, just because I've always liked him. I don't even know if he's good anymore. Greg Gaines. You just get like a name. You just get a dude at defensive tackle. Just a player, person, gray face, whatever. But he can start and he's not going to be a sieve. Would you rather do that and Ruben Bain at 7? Or would you rather spend huge on 2 edge rushers in free agency and take Peter Woods at 7?
I'd rather do either of those plans than to keep Deron Payne. I listen, I can't stress enough. Aside from the first 2 games, and I think there was a third game this year where Payne had a good half, and then there's another season out of Payne's entire career. That's the scope at which he has been, let's say, Pro Bowl level. That's
Hmm.
it. All the rest of the time, it's either average replacement level or it's rotation level. So we are not really creating a hole at defensive tackle any more than production level. So yeah, give me a $6 million defensive tackle in free agency. We are not hurting, and we've also got all this additional cap space to play. So that's the first thing. Get rid of Payne at that ridiculous, insane, garbage price tag. I mean, there's just no way. But to answer your more pointed question, yeah, the mood of the fan base, and I think of Dan Quinn, is they are desperate for an edge rusher, and that would be Bain or Bailey at 7. Absolutely. And then it's a good draft for defensive tackles, especially if you just get a run stopper. There's several guys there. So if the Commanders wanted to trade up into, somewhere around the 50 range, they could get a good run stopping defensive tackle to go along with, whatever $6 or $8 million defensive tackle that we pick up in free agency. But that's just got to happen, man. There's no sense we explored this in depth twice on the show. There is no sense to be had of having Deron Payne at $27 million. He
Hmm.
he hasn't even played up to half of that amount,
Hmm.
honestly.
All right, so move on from Bain. I would jack up the price on all those edge rushers if I'm Washington at this point. I mean, I would start at, Jalen Phillips and Trey Hendrickson, like the top guys, and I would offer them annoyingly large amounts of money and just make everybody mad, including probably even Washington fans, to the point that they're like, we didn't want an edge rusher this bad. Like that's a lot. That's quarterback money that we're handing. I would do that, and then I would try to trade back a few spots. If somebody wanted to come up to 7 to get, let's say, one of those receivers before Kansas City nabbed them at 9, or one of those edge rushers. They want to get one of those tier 1 edge rushers, and I could get Peter Woods in like the middle of the first round, sort of thing, and maybe pick up a another third or fourth round pick to try and bridge that gap of from 71 to whatever I said, that was 71 to 145. If I could bridge that gap somewhere and get it, like that's where I could get another run of the mill defensive tackle if I really wanted to expand on the depth. Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for Washington. All right, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys cap space. I want to make sure they didn't do anything over here and over the cap. But when I last looked, 60 million bucks in the hole. 60, it's now up to 63. It went backwards somehow. Um, in effective cap space for the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe that deal for Javonte Williams just hit the books officially. Um, in the draft, they have 8 picks, just 2 in the top 100, but both are first round, 12 and 20, then 112, and then 5 picks, 150 or later. Current roster, we have a good roster, but we have some work to do to get cap compliant. This cap figure from OTC includes Pickens' tag number, so it includes roughly 29 million cap hit for George Pickens under the franchise tag. So that's at least a good sign. When I saw that 60 at first, I didn't know it included it. And I was like, oh boy, this is tough. So that includes Pickens. And I'm looking to get a long-term deal done. This is great. I'm stepping in as GM in this podcast episode. Jerry Jones, I'm pushing off to the side, and I'm going rogue, and I'm giving George Pickens a good contract to get this contract cap number down. Um, you can get you can and Ben, I don't know if you've ever done this because I know you go down a crazy rabbit hole and you take yourself down enough rabbit holes, so I don't know if this is one you do right now. Actually making contracts and over the cap. You can do like real, give them the signing bonus and map out what the cap is going to be each year and all this stuff. Um, I did that with Dallas because they have a lot of stuff going on here. Um, you can give George Pickens a legitimate like Amon Ra St. Brown contract and still get his cap number and that gets his cap number to like $9 million. Now his cap is going to be like in the 30s for the next 3 seasons, so have to deal with it on the back end. But to take that cap number from 29 to 9 by giving him an extension, making him happy, making the team happy is something I would do. I would extend George Pickens and lower that. Other free agents from Dallas are Jadeveon Clowney, Dante Fowler, Jack Sanborn, Kenneth Murray, plus the released Logan Wilson and safety Donovan Wilson. These players could be brought back in some respect, but is it really worth it? Probably not. New blood probably needs to be brought in, and there isn't much currently on the roster behind those players. Marquise Bell is an intriguing defensive back that could have a role for new DC Christian Parker. Could it be a nickel corner? Could be a safety? We'll see. I've also always liked edge rusher James Houston. You know that. But his ceiling is probably rotational slash number three guy, but not a starter. If I restructure Dak, cut Kenny Clark, and do that Pickens extension, I can clear enough cap to make some minor moves done in free agency. Restructuring CeeDee Lamb, though, would really help my chances of of competitively improving the team. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because again, Jerry Jones is not here right now. In free agency, I have to be smart about what spots I pick to spend this money. My two first round picks could both turn into decent players in the draft, so I don't want to overspend where I may be able to draft someone, save a little money via draft pick. Both my biggest needs being edge rusher, linebacker, safety, and a third corner. I think I'm safe to spend and spread things around. I'm not saying by any means, or I'm not saying any new names here for Dallas that I've said already for these other teams, especially because Dallas should also be a zone heavy team similar to Washington, but Dallas won't have quite the same spending power that Washington did. So Joey Bosa is an intriguing name at edge as a veteran who might not get the same money as a younger player. But Adafe Owe, Boye Mafe, and even Kayvon Chason are other names to note here. At linebacker, I like Nakobe Dean due to his familiarity with Christian Parker, but also guys that may be a touch older for Dallas, like Quincy Williams. He was a good player with the Jets before things went sideways there, so maybe bringing him back to with his brother Quinnen could be a good reset for him. Even guys like Alex Anzalone and Alex Singleton in their early 30s are interesting to pair with a younger free agent and the other starter Demarion Overshone. In the backfield, I'm looking to spend more at safety rather than corner. Jaquan Brisker, Cam Curl, Brian Cook, and Kobe Bryant are all high on my list, as well as Reed Blankenship, another tie-in to Christian Parker from Philadelphia. At corner, the type of bin I'm looking at would be more like Jamel Dean, Rasul Douglas, Cordell Flott, Josh Jobs, Kobe Durant. One of those guys as a depth piece would be good because I have outside corners I'm interested in. Deron Bland I still like. Savon Ravel, draft pick last year, coming off injury, got healthy last year, was playing at the end of the year. I still want him to be an outside corner, a starter. So I don't need to spend big on an outside corner in free agency. This brings me to the draft with two picks in the top 100. We're picking at 12 and 20. So I'm probably not getting in that first tier of defenders starting at 12. But second and third tier can still give me some viable starters. Sonny Styles, Mansour Delane, Peter Woods. Those are my targets at 12. Keldrick Falk would be my fourth option. Jamal McCoy would be my fifth. At 20, I'd love Avion Terrell if I don't get Delane at 12. Um, but if I get Delane at 12, I'd love a defensive tackle like Caden McDonald or even Caleb Banks. Edge rushers Cassius Howell and Akeem Mesidor would be the other targets with that second pick if I can't get one of those DTs. Styles and Terrell would be my ideal 1-2, and then probably Delane and McDonald. Coincidentally, neither of those picks includes an edge rusher, which I desperately need. So that makes it all the more important to grab one of those guys in free agency. So free agency is really going to have to be get the edge rusher, and then target those guys in the draft. Ben, how do you feel about all this for the Cowboys?
Well, there's a lot there. Let me just sit on a guy that you and I both like. I'm probably higher on him, but we both like him in that Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio
I don't know,
State.
Ben. He's working on my board. I'm working on my 2.0, man, and he's creeping up. He's
I
creeping
think
up.
I've got him 3 or 4 on mine. So
Shoot.
unless you've
Okay, he
got him
might
that
be.
high, I'm probably higher
Now,
on him.
now I put him two. What do you think? What do you say to that? Put
Okay.
him at one,
Yeah.
Ben. Do it.
Man, you were higher on Sonny Styles than I am, Simon. I'm amazed here, and I like him a lot. So, for those of you who listen, not all linebackers are created equal. Yeah, this is a guy who has some edge rushing potential, but is probably not going to make his NFL living doing that. His NFL living is kind of as a huge giant safety who plays linebacker because that's what he used to do. Now, I don't think he ever had the speed or the ball skills to be playing collegiate safety. That's why they moved
Hmm.
him to linebacker. But the result has been an alien playing linebacker, who's still not huge ball skills, but boy, the range, the depth, and the fact that he can come in and mash the run and offer some kind of, I think, NFL level quarterback pressure.
Hmm.
It's quite a quarterback. There are going to be several teams who are going to be hard pressed to pass up Sonny Styles. But there's a range of teams starting, I think, with the Dolphins at 11 or whatever they are, and then the Cowboys at 12, and then the Buccaneers at 15. I just don't see those three teams passing up Sonny Styles. He would be so perfect for what they need and what they're trying to do. So Sonny Styles, I think for the Cowboys, he's not going to cure all their ills, but boy, he would be a perfect fit for them, and I really like that. So the Sonny Styles thing, again, he's not the most. I don't want to suggest that he's the second coming of Dick Butkus or something like that, but still, he's a heck of a guy and he's a unique guy. There just aren't many guys doing that. And while the linebackers, we're getting more and more of these bigger athletes playing linebacker because that's the demand both in college and the pros. But still, we're only going to see so many guys like Sonny Styles. It's fairly unique. So yeah, that's a good fit for Dallas there.
I love Sonny Styles, man. I mean, 6'4", 240 plus, like a 4'4" kind of 40 type of player. You mentioned it, safety. So even though it doesn't mean he's a former safety, so he's gonna like be a tight end or racer, right? No, it's not that. It just means he's gonna have
Right.
a feel for playing in zone defenses and keeping things in front of him,
Yeah.
coming downhill to fill gaps to defend the run, like all those other things that come with being a linebacker. It doesn't mean he's immediately gonna be like a really good man coverage player. Wouldn't surprise me if he got there. But yes, for as much as the linebacker position is changing, you look at the other linebackers that we like in this class, CJ Allen is still that, 6'1", 235, sideline to sideline. Can, yeah, rack up a lot of tackles, but like, yeah, he's also not like a huge man-to-man cover guy. He's not a huge thumper. Anthony Hill Jr., a little bigger, 6'3", 240, 245.
Yeah.
Thumper. Run downhill, hit a guard, take away a run lane, but not great. Like he doesn't have that feel in zone, all that. But Sunny Styles does all of that stuff. And then usually those guys are Arvel Reese, who has the same athletic profile, but we're like, he might be an edge rusher. Usually we take these linebackers that are 6'4", 240 fast and say, go play edge rusher. But Styles might be the 1 in 10 that's like, "Ooh, let's keep you at linebacker and see what that looks like." And so the idea of just getting Fred Warner 2.0, man, is just gets me freaking going. Um, so yeah, if I could get Sonny Styles and Avion Terrell at 12 and 20, I'd be thrilled if I'm Dallas. And everything else we'll kind of figure out along the way. Um, but that would be a huge turn for there because 12, it's funny, just the difference between pick 7 for Washington and pick 12 for Dallas. Like Washington could legitimately get like a tier 1 edge rusher, get a guy that might be like a 12 plus sack a year guy. And I don't think Dallas is going to get that at 12, just 5 spots later. I think those guys are going to run out. So that's when you're looking at Keldrick Falk, and that's when you're looking at Cassius Howell and all those other guys. So leaning towards a corner, obviously Sonny Styles if he's there, or even starting to look at defensive tackles makes a lot of sense for them. Um, I think that's it for Dallas. So let's get to our last team of the night, Ben. Philadelphia Eagles. Cap space, 13 mil in effective cap space. Draft picks, 8 in total. 23, 54, 68, 98, 122, 137, 151, 179. Current roster. The roster is still in decent shape with the news that Lane Johnson will be returning for another season, but there are other several key names to watch out for. Landon Dickerson could still be mulling retirement. Dallas Goddard and Reed Blankenship are free agents, and a large portion of the edge rusher room, including Jalen Phillips, who we've mentioned a lot tonight, will be entering free agency. The most notable release or restructure change I think will be made is releasing Michael Carter II, the cornerback that we traded for at the deadline for some depth in the backfield. But we want to keep Cooper DeJean in the slot as long as we have three corners on the field, so there's really no room for Carter. And we'll create about 9 mil in cap savings if we do that. And that money can go towards an outside corner to keep DeJean on the inside. Tyler Steen is also a player that didn't work out at right guard last year, stepping in, but there's a lot of context there. The coaching or the whole line was banged up all through the year, and things soured between Jeff Stoutland and the rest of the offensive coaching staff, as we have now learned. Um, so with a clean slate and hopefully better health, I'm not panicking and making a huge overcorrection at guard, but we'll definitely add some competition there one way or another. It wouldn't stop me from taking offensive lineman at 23, but it wouldn't necessarily mean we have to do like everything is built around replacing Tyler Steen. Philly would be happy to take an offensive lineman at 23 and say he can compete with Steen. He might be a guy ready and wait. He might take Dickerson's spot at left guard if Dickerson retires. He might be a guy that replaces Lane Johnson in a year or two, right? Like if they took a Proctor or a Lumbu or something like that. Um, but Steen, like I'm fine leaving there and just kind of seeing what happens, creating a little competition some way. Free agency. Our priority in free agency is going to be retaining edge rusher Jalen Phillips. So I've mentioned him how many times for how many of these other, all seven of these other teams maybe. But we traded a third round pick for him. He's still young. We want him to be here for a long time. That said, we're going to have a hard out at like 19, 20 million based on our cap situation. So Washington, as I mentioned, price him out quickly. Uh, if we are going to retain him, let's assume we're able to do that. That leaves holes at cornerback, safety, and tight end for us to fill in the draft. We hope to move quickly because if Phillips gets priced out, we love to spread that money around with Blankenship, maybe Goddard, and maybe a different corner or edge rusher. But we aren't valuing a safety. We're still the Eagles. A 31-year-old tight end or an external free agent over Phillips. If all of that goes to Phillips and that's all we do in free agency, we're cool with that. In the draft, let's say those are our holes. Let's say we have Phillips. Then we're going to move our sights in free or in the draft to secondary and tight end. Kenyon Sadiq would be our preference at 23. Versatile player that can serve as an inline tight end, flexed out slot receiver, or in the backfield as an H-back. We consider a small move up to get him as well with one of our 4 picks after 120, but that would only be a couple spots. Picks 54 and 68, I'm looking at defensive backs. Long list of names for that. Chris Johnson, Keith Abney, D'Angelo Pons, AJ Halsey, Kamari Ramsey. Pick 98, we are looking in the trenches, either O-line or edge depth. Georgia Tech guard Kalen Rutledge, Notre Dame guard Billy Schrauth, Oregon tackle Isaiah World, and Florida tackle Austin Barber are the offensive linemen I'm targeting there. With my 4 day 3 picks, we'll take a flyer on a wide receiver, linebacker, whatever else we don't take at 98, and another defensive back. Ben, how do you feel about this plan for the Eagles?
Well, to begin with, I like the that last little cluster of draft picks that you mentioned, both on offensive line and defensive back. That's a great group there for the Eagles, and you know they typically know how to handle it. I I will say what seems without taking the tension off of the plan that you put together, because that was a good detailed plan there. This is going to be quite a year for the Eagles, and for us to find out how good really is this general manager. There are I shouldn't say many, there are several seasons where he's been called the best in the NFL, and maybe he is. But, he's going to have to prove it all over again. Somebody else won the Super Bowl last year. Somebody else is getting attention as being a really bright
Mm-hmm.
general manager. He's losing Jeff Stoutland, who put together for both Super Bowls this entire Eagles run, who put together the best offensive line in the game. And you mentioned Dickerson, maybe out. Tyler Steen hasn't yet worked out. They almost lost Johnson at tackle, but he's back. So that's a big deal. Saquon Barkley will be a year older and has always been injury prone, even though the Eagles have been fortunate to a degree with that, right? So, then AJ Brown, will he even be on the team next year? I'll bet it's 50-50, whether or not he's on the
Hmm.
team. Maybe
Hmm.
40-60 the opposite way, and then you always, winning or losing, you always have the discontent and the kind of the chaos that lays underneath this Philadelphia franchise. I mean, it's always there. It doesn't take much losing for that to come, screaming to the top and just, fissure everything. There's a lot going on here. The defense will still be good, I'm sure. That shouldn't really be a problem. But, as this offense starts to, have these struggles, then it falls back on Jalen Hurts again. And while Jalen Hurts is a fine playmaker, he doesn't have a strong arm. And defenses can start to suck in on that if they know that we don't have to worry about Barkley as much, or we don't have to worry about this offensive line beating us to death, or
Hmm.
we don't have to worry about this big wide receiver over here named Brown who can torch us. They can start to strangle out, a
Oh yeah.
limited armed quarterback. So we're going to find out over the next off season or two again, can this Eagles franchise remake themselves when they continue to lose their coordinators to other franchises? Can they continue to remake themselves? They're not going to be bad, but can they climb that Super Bowl mountain again? So we will find out, and again, I like that cluster of draft picks you mentioned there at the end.
What do you think between Statland being out, with all those questions you mentioned, what do you think is the most important thing they can do this off season to insulate themselves from that? Like what's the one thing where if you're Howie Roseman, you're like, I've got to get this one thing done if I'm gonna protect myself from everything that's happening around here.
Yeah, I tell you, to me, it's not too dissimilar. Listen, these franchises are very different, but the situation will be similar. It's not too dissimilar to what the Commanders have to do with Jaden Daniels and what the Broncos kind of have to do with Bo Nix and what the Giants, to a lesser degree, will have to do with Jackson Dart. You have these guys who you trust at quarterback, but they're not brilliant passers.
Hmm.
This isn't the next Aaron Rodgers, Brady, Manning group.
Right.
These are sufficient guys, right? They're good leaders and everything, but you're going to have to insulate them. So I think they've got to, even without Stalin, they've got to get this offensive line back up and running to some degree. Oh, yeah, it's not bad, but they got to get it closer to what it was. And they've got to make sure if they lose Brown that they pull somebody else in, like a Denzel Boston or a
Hmm.
Chris Brazel or somebody
Yeah.
to fill that role. It won't be quite one for one, but at least that body type.
Yeah. If Brown, if you do something with Brown, if Brown's not on the team, wide receiver immediately like vaults up. And I mentioned Sadiq as a pass catcher, but like the thing with Sadiq, and I mentioned him as the top target for two teams here. These are really the two teams I like him like the most for. So when we do the rest of these War Room series, like I'm not going to be mentioning Kenyon Sadiq a whole lot, I don't think. Um, but he doesn't, to me, he doesn't work as a like standalone. You get this guy and this becomes like a huge part of the offense. He works in this offense if everything else works the way it does, because you have Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, an offensive line, some version of a Hurts run game, and then Sadiq's just like filling in all the gaps, right? Because he does a lot of like little stuff well, but I don't see him as a Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, like feed 10 plus times a game, go do stuff, right? Maybe close to that, like Colson Loveland like can kind of break things open 5, 6 times a game to a degree, but like that would be like ceiling. I view him maybe even a small step down from that. But he fits well here because of all this other stuff. But yeah, if AJ Brown is out the door and you're sitting there at 23, you're like, oh man, I gotta like gonna draft Denzel Boston and hope that replacement for AJ Brown works. How'd that work when Tennessee had to trade Traylon Burks at 18, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that'd be tough. I would you if AJ Brown doesn't walk into Howie Roseman's office and demand a trade and like say I'm not coming to camp. I'm talking in the media. Like I'm not showing up. This is the last time I'll be in the Philadelphia facility. If he doesn't do that, are you keeping him or are you trying to trade him?
Yeah, I would keep him just because of the talent level. You know, what honestly, whether Brown's there or not, there's going to be discontent and strife in this Philadelphia
Yeah, if it's not him,
franchise
it's going to be somebody else anyway. So,
with somebody else. So I would keep him. If he's willing to be a part of the team, then I'm going to keep him. Part of that too would be, hey, I just don't want to have too many changes going on this offense in one off season. I know I'm going to have to slowly remake this, because of Stoutland and my offensive linemen are some of them starting to age out here. It's
hmm
already, I mean, it already started with Kelsey at center, what, 2 seasons ago now.
Yep.
Now we're losing Dickerson, and then eventually, it's not far off for Lane Johnson. So I kind of hate to remake the offensive line the same season I'm letting go of Brown, but I may have to do that. I may not have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can keep all those pieces on offense together, Sadiq feels like he'd be the perfect like have a kid to save the marriage, right? Like everything here is a little
Oh
rocky, but
God.
like look at Kenyon Sadiq. Look at this cool, like rocked up dude that's like doesn't seem like he'd be a blocker, but like blocks a little bit and like, you know, right? Yeah. And he plays a little bit like Goddard did when, and Goddard's like best version of himself with this offense. So I think that makes could be fun for a year. Um, don't do that, everybody. That wouldn't work. All right, Ben, first
Are
war
you
room.
talking about the kid or are you talking about Kenyon
Yeah, well,
Sadiq here?
anyways, Ben, and the first war room, man, how do you feel? We've just stepped out of the war room. We
Yeah.
we deliberated. We finished the box of donuts that was in there, 2 pots of coffee. How do we do?
Yeah, I love this kind of stuff. The only thing that keeps me from trying to pursue it as a career is I just love spending time with my family. I don't want to work. Listen, I work when I'm at home, but I have the kids with me, right? I mean, the kids have been right around here all night, and the kids, when we go out, when I get home in the evenings, I go outside and the kids are out there with me. I just don't want to spend, 7 days a week away from my beautiful family. But man, I eat this stuff up. I spend a lot of time. I have spent, 20 years working on this stuff now. We're only getting deeper into it. We try to get deeper into it without being obnoxious or nerdy. We try to make it clear and
I'll be nerdy.
concise and really present some actual work on this stuff. We're not trying to be cute here. We're putting in some work into it. And if we can be funny along the way, we'll do that too. So, I really eat this stuff up and, we'll keep pouring out a lot of work all through the off season on it.
And this is, let's see, when's the next one we're doing of this? We're doing this again after free agency, I think. I think we're taking a
Right.
few weeks off.
Yes.
This first one, it's always fun to do this version of it where we have to talk through what roster changes are going to be and what free agency things are going to be. So we always do one like this. But we have learned, because I think 2 years ago we tried to do this in the middle of free agency and that did not work. So we're
Right.
skipping free because it was like literally changing in the middle of the episode. Like guys were getting signed to like $40 million contracts in the middle and we were changing draft plans. Um, you saw just how Mike Dana like derailed us for 2 minutes there. So this will be the last one for a little bit, but we wanted to give everybody a little taste. It's Combine Week. We wanted to talk some draft, but we wanted to talk about these moves as well. So this is a way for Ben and I to also kind of get to do a free agency primer together, a little bit of draft stuff. Um, but we will have these war rooms again. I already forgot. I was looking for the schedule in just a second. Let's see here. Next war room is scheduled for do 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 the end of March. All right, so 1 month from now, we're going to continue the War Room series, but it'll be like 3 and 4 weeks at that point because we're going to be right up against the draft. Um, so when we do these again, these are going to be very, very draft focused. We're going to have all names for like 7 rounds worth of guys. We're going to be ready to go. So if you enjoyed this, thank you all so much. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Whether you're on Box Score Network, Simon and Friends Pod, after that, go check out Pro Football Enterprises. We really thank you. If you're listening on audio, we hope you enjoyed it. Ben and the Draft War Room will be back next month. In the meantime, on Box Score Network, we'll have mocks, we'll have big board updates, we'll have some fun other content that I'm not going to spoil that we have some people working on, and player profiles from Ben, conversations from this pod as well. So all draft content on Box Score Network YouTube. Ben, anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, listen, we really appreciate everybody listening and Simon, all the work on the plans. The war rooms are actually better when they're done immediately after the Super Bowl because we get to talk about everything, but they're
Hmm.
infinitely more difficult because literally 4 weeks after the Super Bowl, it all changes, and you have to factor in all these potential free agents, knowing that a third of them probably won't hit free agency. It's way more difficult, even though it is more fun because of us getting to talk about all the different players. So it's way more simple to do these after free agency has kind of settled down. You get to, it's just not as much work.
Yep. All right. So, everyone, thank you all so much. We will do this again soon. We'll do a free agency preview next week. So, make sure you are back and ready for that. And until then, thank you all so much. Have fun and be safe out there.